Good morning, everybody. My name is Lynette, and welcome to my garden. Having gone over 3 weeks with minuscule amounts of rain, the garden is looking pathetically crispy. But that doesn't mean there aren't some things that we should take note of, especially if you are like me and you garden without supplemental water. So join me as we walk around the garden and we look at what is surviving the drought. We're going to start today's tour down by the stream, and we're going to take a lesson from Mother Nature's playbook, and we're going to look at the things that she wants blooming in August, because if they're blooming in August, they must be drought tolerant. We have a nice selection of August bloomers here. Let's go in a little closer and see what we have. You can see we have some wild autumn clematis growing. That reseeds all over the place here. I actually end up pulling it out of my garden because it can be so prolific. We have some Joe Pye weed, which is the pink. Then you can see in the back we've got goldenrod, and then finally tall up here is the white Joe Pye weed. And our roadsides are and swamps and ditches are all full of this time of year. And because Mother Nature does such a good job growing it, I do not put these plants in my garden. They do end up in there every once in a while, but I do not cultivate these. I prefer to see what Mother Nature does. Let's see what else we've got growing along the ditch here. If we scoot just a few steps over to the left, there's another vine growing, and this is called wild cucumber, or that's what I call it. And you can see it gets these pretty white flowers on it. Now this is an annual, so if it does get in the garden, I could let it grow. It will grow up in a lot of trees, you'll see it around, but very interesting little plant. I don't find it to be terribly invasive. You can see the white clematis is in there. The clematis has the star-shaped flowers, whereas the wild cucumber have the more fringed flowers in the background. As I did a turnaround to head up to the house to go into the garden, I noticed a couple other things you guys might be interested in. The jewelweed is in bloom, and the elderberries are loaded. The birds are going to be down here having a feast. And there's one other thing from wildlife I want to show you. We're going to turn around and head this way. Can you see that little pathway there that goes right down to the stream? And as we go over this way, there's a much wider pathway right there. And if you don't already know what that is, I'll give you a bigger hint as we just go this way. And you can see what's using that pathway. The beavers have been busy trying to take down this tree. I'm surprised they didn't take it all the way down. All right, now let's head up to the garden. Okay, we're back at the house, and you can see in front of you that my containers are doing really well. I'm not going to talk about those because I am supplemental watering. In today's video, I want to concentrate on those things that are requiring minimal care from me in this hot, dry weather. And you can see in front of you is the miscanthus variegated grass. Does a wonderful job. It's probably about 4 feet tall. It's a little short this year. Usually it's about 5 feet tall. But drought tolerant, I don't have to mess with it, and that's one of my favorite plants. You'll see it used in my garden as a backdrop. And if we spin around, you'll see my crispy hostas. They do not like this hot, dry weather. But then we come to this little section, which has another grass. This is an annual grass, the rubrum, which I have not supplemental watered this, so it is doing really, really well. And in the background, you will see that there is a spider flower, and that came up on its own. That's a seedling, and that has gotten no supplemental water. That's about 5 feet tall, and it is just doing gangbusters there. See if we can zoom in so you can see how pretty those flowers are. Now, some people say that these stink. I don't get the smell off them. They do have some thorns, and they will reseed like crazy in your garden, so you have to be really careful with them. But to have something that tall blooming that well this time of year, I think is phenomenal. And I really think I'm going to be introducing a little bit more of those. All you need is about 6. You can buy a 6-pack usually at your local nursery in the spring, but that's all you'll need. And again, I have not watered this, so I think that's a real keeper. Let's head over this way. I am going to be editing this video because you don't need to see all the crispy in my garden. I really just want to highlight on what's looking really well. And if you look down here, variegated liriope, doing fantastic. It shows up really nicely, even against the crispy grass. We've got some autumn joy sedum holding its own. Loves this hot, dry weather. And let's see, in the back there you can see more of the miscanthus. And I'm going to fight my way through the garden here. The roses are doing really well. I do nothing with these roses. I don't prune them. I don't fertilize them. They're doing really nicely. I don't remember what variety they are. And then if you look in the background, you can see there's some delphinium coming up. Those are the ones that I cut down earlier in the season after they bloomed the first time. The storm took them down, and they are coming back again. Not anywhere as nice and as strong, but they are coming back. All right, we're going to swing around. This is Datura, and this plant would go to seed and probably take over if I let it. But because I keep it well maintained, it doesn't get out of control. But you can see how big these flowers are. Really, really nice. It does come back to me as a perennial, which is why I definitely don't want to let those seedlings develop, because I don't want it taking over, because it does a lot of seeds. But it looks good this time of year. Another one of those plants to make note of. And normally I don't have this salvia in the background here. This is the first year I put that pot in, but this datura looks really nice up against the grass. Another annual that will reseed itself around is the Verbena bonariensis. I always have a hard time saying that. I always want to say Buenos Aires. I don't know why. But what I like about this plant is that it's tall, light, and airy, so you can see through it. So you can see my hydrangeas in the background. You can see the black-eyed Susans that are doing remarkably well in this drought condition. More rubrum grass. We've got the cone flowers. They're just starting to go over. The hydrangeas in the background, even though they're not white, they've faded to a nice green. The ones back there have not suffered from the drought at all, unlike the wee whites, which they are turning very crispy. And then in the front here, we have the calamintha. Again, really nice plants to bloom this time of year. So even though we've gone almost 3 weeks without any water, I mean, we have had a little rain, but nothing significant, these plants are still looking good. Now, for foliage, you know, you can't always have flowers, but sometimes it's important to have plants that the foliage looks good all year long. And what you're looking at right there is Baptisia. And there are some nice seed pods. They're nice and dark and black. If you do flower arranging, they can be used in that. So these are plants. All the plants that I'm talking about today, they may be in flower. I'm going to mention things that have good foliage this time of year. So these are things that really should be the backbone of your garden because they look good almost all season long. The asters haven't opened up yet, but you can see this tall one right in front of you. That should be purple. I need to get out here and deadhead. That's my job for today. Of course, the lamb's ear, another plant that's just doing great even though it's droughty. Penstemon, I don't remember which one that is. I don't think it, I know it's not Moonlight Masquerade, but again, it's looking pretty good. And then of course, we also have the hibiscus. Now, even though hibiscus really can do, or they prefer a little bit damper conditions, they're going really, really well now. Limelight hydrangeas. And then I just want to give you a little catch up here again. In the back you can see the purple phlox, and it's looking a little wilty and droopy. And that's, we just left that alone this year. We did nothing to it. And if you look down below, this nice, bright, beautiful green patch is the one that we cut back in July. So I'm going to keep you posted on whether that blooms late in the season. But look how healthy that foliage looks compared to the other phlox. Quite a difference. And it might be nice to get some later blooms. So this is just something we're going to experiment with and see if in the future we're going to keep cutting that back. Another plant that I think is going to be a mainstay of the garden is going to be Nicotiana. These are doing fantastic. Again, no supplemental water. And they are probably about 3.5 feet tall. Another plant I want to make note of is the Amsonia. Nice feathery texture. Doesn't look burned or dried out at all. So that could be a good filler plant for you. These are some asters, and you can see there's one little flower getting ready to open. If you need a tall filler plant, this is butterfly weed, and I don't see any monarchs or anything munching on it, which is a bummer. But again, a nice plant that you could use as a filler to to fill in to help carry the garden late in the season. Now, this is really interesting. This is Agastache, and I'll put the name on it. I grew it from seed this year, and to be honest, I have not watered it, and it has been blooming all season long. So this one definitely is handling the drought. And while this little clump of things might not look that good because I need to deadhead, these are Montauk daisies. Again, the flowers are gone, but the foliage looks good. And in the background, you can see there's a little pink flower coming up. And that is turtlehead. That's a native wildflower. Comes in white native, but pink has been hybridized. And the foliage on that looks fantastic. And it's about 2.5, maybe 3 feet tall. The annual millet is another plant that's thriving in this hot, dry weather. So a bigger, fuller clump of that would be really nice this time of year. The rabbits did eat it down on me, so I need to make note of that for next year. And let's just keep going this way because we have more sedum. And then we go into the alliums, which it's early in the morning and the bees haven't found it yet, but normally they are just all over that plant. And then in the background are my Ito peonies. They're not looking too bad with the drought conditions. So another plant that you can use for spring color and then also the foliage. 9 barks, they're surviving the weather very well. My hydrangeas, I do come out here and give them a dash of water every once in a while. But look at that color on that one. Oh, it's just so pretty. And they've faded these neat, neat colors. I'd love to take them inside, but I just enjoy them so much outside. Mums. The mums are starting to open up. Now these are hardy mums, not the mums that you buy, in the pots. These are Igloo series mums. And again, they're surviving the drought. So put more of these in your garden. This is Nicotiana again. I did not plant this one. This was a seedling that just popped up a couple years ago. I've never weeded it out. It just keeps coming back year after year. And again, it's looking really nice. I am rather pleased with this annual alyssum from Proven Winners. I have not watered it at all, and it has been growing and thriving all summer. And next to it you can see some more of that agastache that I was talking about earlier, and then there's a little grass in there. Now, I like grasses, but I always worry about them seeding in my garden, so I do not do a lot of grasses. I try not to do a lot of plants that reseed. And I know you're saying, oh, but you just showed us the Nicotiana and the spider plant, or not spider plant, spider flower. I'll make exceptions. These big bold leaves are the leaves of Cranby cordifolia. And then next to it you can see the Gomphrena. This is from Proven Winners. Now the Gomphrena is in a pot because the rabbits eat it, so I elevated it. But I would really consider that a very drought tolerant plant. And if you don't have rabbits, you might want to consider putting it in the garden. Again, it's one of those plants that some people say smell. I don't get any aroma, good or bad, from it. Going just over the edge is agastache, another great fall plant that gives you great foliage all season long. This pretty little daisy coming up. That's Monk's Aster, and that should be blooming. That's not doing as well as it has in the past. I might need to give that a little bit more fertilizer. And then we have this pretty little mum, which this is a pink perennial mum. I'll put the name on the screen if I can find it, but that one kind of spreads a little. But again, to have some flowers and nice looking foliage this time of year. This is another hardy mum from the Igloo series. And look how bad, see, I'm a bad gardener. Look how bad those iris look. I want to dig them out and put them down where it's more wet. I think they'll be happier, but it just hasn't been wet enough to dig them out. The Russian sage. I just got these 3 plants last year on clearance and didn't know where to put them, so I just tucked it in right here. I think I'm going to be putting more right there since they seem to be very happy. Now what's not doing so well, it looks very, very crispy, is the Astilbe from Proven Winners Dark Side of the Moon. Not looking so good right there. I've been pretty pleased with this whole area this year. It's been looking really pretty good. We've got the sedum in the front. We have the Verbena bonariensis. We've got some of the Proven Winners annual sunflowers. And in the back there is the agastache. Then we come over to the Ruby Falls redbud. More agastache, and you can see the grass in the background. That's at miscanthus. And the miscanthus grass is a clumper, not a spreader. And then finally in the background we have some of the blue chiffon Rose of Sharon from Proven Winners. This has been a really nice little section of the garden. There's some things that really need to be deadheaded right now, but overall this has been one of my favorite parts this year. Now I know some of you are going to groan and moan, but this is loosestrife, and I've never had a problem with it reseeding in the garden. It's an invasive weed that is taking over the wetlands, but maybe because it's here in the garden and it's dry, it's better behaved. But that's another late blooming plant that can add interest this time of year. And then this is a nice little section. You can see there's some dark sedum. There's the black-eyed Susans looking really nice. And then this plant is very similar to the Amsonia, but this is supposed to be a sneeze weed. I planted it in here many, many years ago because it's supposed to get little purple flowers like an aster. I've never really seen it flower, but the plant texture is fantastic, and that's why it's allowed to stay. Dahlias. I know they're great filler for this time of year, but these in this pot just haven't bloomed. I see buds, but they just are all malformed, and I don't understand why. If you're a dahlia grower and you can offer some suggestions, please let me know. It gets full sun. The plants look wonderfully healthy, but they're just not performing. The foliage is great, and I do not put dahlias in my garden because I don't supplemental water. And August is always just so dry that it's just not worth it for me. The Miss Molly butterfly bush is doing really well. And then hopefully you can see in the background that big tall plant. That is Boltonia snowbank. That's a native plant. It's very similar to an aster, and that plant is easily 6 feet tall. And if you're looking for something to fill in a big space, that is really nice. Now, I do contain it because it will spread. It's not hard, it's not deep rooted, but I don't like spreaders in my garden. So that's actually planted in a big pot. And you can see how pretty that grass looks. Shrubbery is important in the fall garden. So when you're planting your garden, plan on doing a mixed border. You really need to add shrubs for winter interest, but they also look good all season long. And then concentrate on fall, because your fall plants, like your winter, will give you the longest season of interest. Here's some Victoria Blue Salvia mixed in with some black-eyed Susans, and then in the background there's some hibiscus that have yet to open up. Those hibiscus I just moved there earlier this year, so I'm pretty pleased with how they're doing. And then in the background again we've got, or to the right, we've got some limelight hydrangeas. A nice little ground cover that gets pretty little blue flowers on it is the plumbago. And then in the background you can see my pot and some more of the hibiscus, some more sedum to the right. And then if we go around this way, you can see the crispy hydrangeas. And while the foliage looks pretty good, the flowers are taking a beating from the heat. So next year, they're going to get moved. I think this amaranth is getting a little out of control, and I'm probably going to regret planting it because I bet it's going to reseed all over the place. But it looks nice planted underneath the vanilla strawberry hydrangea tree with that variegated miscanthus in the background. We've got a nice little hedgerow of hardy hibiscus underplanted with nepeta, and the nepeta is making a nice soft pillow effect along the edge of the sidewalk. Now normally nepeta will splay open in the heat of the season, so you usually cut it back to force it to regrow. I did not cut this back at all this year, and I'm very, very pleased with the effect that it's making. This area gets an awful lot of snow in the wintertime, so we needed to plant something that we could cut to the ground and then come back every year and make a statement. And I think this is doing just a wonderful job. Another plant that looks really good all season long is yucca. Very, very drought tolerant. If you're looking for something more at the front of the border, the Boom Chocolata foliage is still looking nice and fresh. The Japanese anemones are opening up. You can see there are a few little crispy leaves, but overall they're looking really good and they're loaded with blossoms. In the shade garden, the Hackenicola is holding up pretty well. The hydrangeas, I've given them a little supplemental water, not much because they were just put in last year, so they're still kind of new and fresh. The coleus I haven't watered. That's doing really well. And then I don't know if you're going to be able to see this plant. This is really cute. It is a thalictrum, and it has tiny, tiny little purple flowers, very light and airy. And then in the background, you can see some of that turtle head is starting to open up. And then right next to it, you have a crispy hosta. But when you look at these daylilies that are planted more in the shade compared to those in the sun, you can see the foliage just stays that much healthier in the shade. Oh, and then this plant, this is the Cimicifugia, or Actea now, and that is just getting ready to open up. But nice dark foliage, and it's going to have white flowers that smell fantastic. So put that one on your list. Well, that's going to do it for my drought tolerant plant tour. I hope you found it interesting. Please be sure to share, like, and subscribe. And remember, it's very important to use these fall blooming plants in your garden. They reward you with fantastic foliage throughout the whole season, and then they give you this late season little pops of color. And always remember to let the chipmunks do a little planting too, because you never know what's going to pop up. Have a great day. Get out in your garden and have some fun.